Welcome, Pioneers, to Icarus, specifically Dangerous Horizons, which recently released. And I learned that through this release, we've now got console players. So if you're a console player, welcome. Now, to answer a quick question, there is no cross compatibility as of right now between consoles and each other, as well as consoles to PC. So if you have friends on different systems, you're going to need to own the game there in order to be able to play it with them. Now, hopefully, this little survival guide is going to help get you guys started for success. Now, I've been playing for a few months now, and although I am not an end-all be-all expert on these things, I have hit the end of the tech tree on the original build, as well as the new content that came out with Dangerous Horizons. And although I haven't played an open world on the new map or done any missions on the new map, I do feel as though I have enough authority to be able to get you guys pointed in the right direction. So if you're unfamiliar with the game and you're interested in picking it up for yourself, what exactly is this game? In sense, it is an open world survival that also has a mission mode. Now, myself personally, I have two characters. I have a character that plays in the open world, and I have a character that runs missions. Now, what would be the advantage of that as opposed to doing everything on the same character? Well, once your character is in a mission or in an open world, they are there for the duration until they evacuate out or complete the mission. Which means any equipment that you've taken in with you is also locked to that character until that character egresses or leaves the mission. Now, we'll get on to equipment here very shortly, and that'll make a bit more sense for those of you who are unfamiliar with the game. But just understand that basically I play two characters, one that's meant to run the missions and earn some money, and the other one that is meant to play in the open world and find exotics. Now, exotics are kind of like the premium currency, and there's three different forms of exotics. There's purple exotics, there's red exotics, and currently we also now have uranium thanks to Dangerous Horizons. Coming into the character select screen, we're going to see a silhouette of our character if you have one already, and this is going to depict them where they currently are. If they're on a space station, you're going to get the space station background. If they're on world, you're going to get the background of wherever they were last or most recently. In this case, my character of Ovan was out spelunking when I logged out and is currently in a cave. Now, something that's interesting about Icarus that I haven't seen a lot of other games do is your inventory is shared across your other characters. So any equipment that you unlock for one can be used by another as long as it's available and not locked onto a world by having been taken in by that other character. And I'll explain that here by going into my character Ovan, which is my open world survival character. Now, if I were to hit resume right now, it would launch me into the open world. However, we're going to go up to the top of the screen and we're going to go to loadout. On the left-hand side, you're going to see all the equipment that is currently available to go into a world with me or to be called into a world later on using a system that's built into the game, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. On the right, we can see all of my characters. In this case, Ovan is got all of this equipment, and Taylor has all of this equipment. Now, currently, Taylor is in Red Mustang's world. Red Mustang is a friend of mine. We were working on missions, and currently that character and all of her equipment is locked to her. And unless I were to stick it in essentially an escape pod and send it back up to orbit, I could not call it in on Oven's character. However, I can use any of the items that are here and call them into either one of those worlds. I just can't call them into both, unless I were to craft a second batch. Getting on to the workshop and explaining what I mean by crafting. Now, this is going to be really overwhelming when you look at it the first time, but just know that all of these different categories are things that you can learn how to make, craft, and then bring into a world with you. In the case of Ovan, he's wearing one of these suits. In this case, it gives me plus physical resistance 10, plus 2 suit modules, which we'll cover that in a moment. It gives me 1 oxygen suit module and 1 water suit module, which allows me to bring in a canteen and an oxygen tank to help my character out a little bit. Now, when you first make your character, you aren't going to have those things, and we'll talk about that in a minute when I jump into an open world. Now, what are some things that you should be working toward? What do you want to spend your early game exotics on? Because you aren't going to have a lot of them early on. I recommend grabbing one of these suits pretty much right away. You don't need to run up the tech tree, figure out your playstyle first, but go ahead and grab your first suit. This is going to make survival a little easier because it comes with an oxygen module and it also comes with a suit module. In the case of armor, this is really nice and you can accrue it over time, but honestly, it's not needed up front. What you do want to probably spend some points on is getting a decent backpack. Backpacks increase not just the number of slots in your inventory, but also the overall carry weight, and some of the backpacks that are later on in the game can affect other things like skinning animals, the yield you get from those animals, the amount of health a teammate gets revived with when you pick them back up, etc., etc. Modules, these do all kinds of really cool fun stuff, everything from boosting your speed, to adding more suit modules, to making it so ore weighs less, all kinds of really cool fun stuff, and this is really going to depend on your playstyle. However, I really recommend getting the movement speed module as well as getting the inventory module early on, especially once you get a suit that can handle 2 suit modules. Those two are going to be your best friends early on until you really develop your playstyle. Gadgets. Now, you do have to get the Fire Whacker. I have never spent points on the Fire Whacker. I always spend points on the canteen and the oxygen module right away. Now, what does this mean? Research cost. So this cost me 200 credits to be able to learn how to make this object, and then 75 credits every time I want to make one. So if something happens and it gets left behind in a world, I have to spend another 75 credits to make another one. Or if I wanted to bring in multiple for some reason, I can do that as well. Now, the cool thing about the canteen and the oxygen module is you can refill these before you leave a mission and bring full ones in with you when you go into the next mission. Anything that is done in one can carry into the other as long as it is this equipment that you're made in this screen. So if you craft a pickaxe in world, that pickaxe is gone when you leave. The only equipment that you can bring with you is the equipment that you brought in. Which means that if you craft a pickaxe here in the workshop and it breaks while you're in the world, you might want to hold on to that so that you can exfil with that at the end of the mission so that you can repair it when you get back to the station. I always recommend starting out with a pickaxe and then quickly going to the axe. The 3D printed one is really nice because it basically starts out at the same level as steel, which can take a little while to get to in the start of the game. Knives are really great. I wish I had invested in knives a lot sooner, and the first 2 knives are entirely done with money and not exotics, so that's always a great place to go. Now, as for the entire rest of the equipment, this is all going to depend on what you want to do. The only other recommendations that I might have in equipment is the deployables. Now you can see I have the bed, and although there is a portable campfire, there is also a furnace. Now this furnace is really great because it can smelt everything up to steel. If you're going to be a solo player, this is a really great way to get yourself up and going really early on, but you will outpace this pretty quickly, and at this point, I don't even bring one of these in with me anymore, but I do always bring the bed with me when I'm running missions. When I'm running the open world, I can usually spend a little extra time to go ahead and make a proper bed, which will give me much better bonuses than what this cot will, but the cot gives you significantly better bonuses than sleeping on the floor in a bedroll. Now, a lot of the stuff that I haven't covered so far is kind of more advanced gameplay and is stuff that I encourage you to flick through on your own time and read what everything does. This has just been what I really recommend as a new player you try to grab right away. Now, your mileage may vary, and other YouTubers and content creators might be telling you to do something differently. This is just what's worked for me, and anytime I make a new character, these are always the things that I go for first. Now, we're not going to talk about the biolab in today's video. That's more of an advanced topic, but just know that there are some really nice pieces of equipment in the biolab that is going to be pretty costly for you to get your hands on, especially in the early game, and really isn't worth your time to invest in the early game. You can worry about that toward the end of the mid game and the late game once you start really racking up some serious credits. In my personal play, I do open world and missions more than anything else. Outposts can be quite a lot of fun, but with the XP reduction and you being a new player, you may want to stay away from outposts for right now and just focus on the open world and focus on missions. Now trust me, you're going to want to start in Olympus, especially as a new player. It may be tempting to try to get some of the bonuses from the later game stuff, but you're really going to just be hitting your head against the wall until you get some levels under your belt. Now, if you're brand new to the game and you haven't dropped in yet, you're going to be starting out with the beachhead mission. Now, you're going to see that it says 7 days, 0 hours, and 0 minutes on the timer. What exactly does this mean? Well, originally when the game first launched, this meant you had 7 real-world days to complete the mission, regardless of whether or not the game was in play. The timer was counting down irregardless. Now, they've done away with that since then. However, this timer is still a real-world timer. You still have 7 real-world days to complete the first mission, even though it may only take you a few hours. Now, that said, there are also missions where you only have 2 hours to complete the mission, like you see on the next one. That also said, if you start scrolling down, you'll start noticing 30 hours, or 30 days, 0 hours, and 0 minutes. These are missions you're going to be in for a long time. If you're playing with friends, and you're not sure if those friends are going to stick it out, you may want to make sure you're the host so that you don't get locked out of that character and lose that stuff. And although you can pull your character out of a world, if you have items from the workshop on that character, they will be abandoned in that world and you will have to make them over again. So I've jumped into my open world here just to kind of give you guys a good understanding of what you're going to be seeing on your HUD. Now, I have a lot of late game stuff in my hotbar. Just is what it is. You guys will all get there eventually. But we're going to go over some of my recommendations on where you should spend some of your skill points, as well as where you should put some of your technology points, at least in the early game. Now, it's important to keep in mind that although you are limited on how many skill points you have, you are not limited on how many tech tree points you have. Eventually, you will have enough tech tree points to be able to unlock everything. You just have to pick and choose early on where you're going to spend your points, but eventually you will be able to unlock everything. So let's talk real quick about what's important to grab early on and what you can kind of forget about until later down the road. When I first open up my inventory, under status effects, we're going to be able to see all of the positive and negative status effects. Now, you can remove positive status effects if you wish to. If you're wanting to replace them with something else, you can click on them to remove them. I'm not exactly sure how that works on consoles, but obviously on PC, we just click the little X. Now, you cannot remove negative status effects unless you have the medicine to do so. I have some pretty advanced medicine that kind of does a little bit of everything, but in the early game, you're going to be working with bandages and healing salves and pastes and things, and you may need to apply 4 or 5 different medicines to really kind of get rid of a really nasty wound later down the road. Now, starting in the middle of the screen, you're going to see that I have an oxygen, a food, and a water bar. However, I only have an oxygen and water slot. There are suits that give you a food slot. There are some suits that will give you a double water slot or a double oxygen slot. You can also see any of my auxiliaries. These are my augments that kind of go in on my environmental suit. Now, I only have 2 on this particular suit, but there are some suits that go up to, I believe, 4. Depending upon if you have some of the DLCs or not. We're going to skip crafting for the moment and go straight into our tech tree. Now, you're going to want to take a second to look this over, but in my opinion, you're going to grab some of the basics. Now, if you're doing the tutorial, it's going to basically force you into the stone axe and the stone pickaxe and the stone knife. Those are obvious, those are given. You may want to go ahead and upgrade to bone stuff as quick as you can. A bone sickle is really great because it's going to allow you to collect a lot of fiber, and early on you're going to be making a lot of stuff out of wood, which oftentimes has a crafting recipe that goes alongside fiber. So getting a bone sickle is really great so that you can get a lot of fiber early on without having to just pick it up with your bare hands. It really dramatically increases your yield. Early on, you're going to want to grab your campfire and you want to grab your bedroll. Now, it's important to understand that the bedroll does not skip forward in time. It just skips the night. So think of sleeping through the night as just moving the sun as opposed to actually moving the clock. And I know that's a little weird, but that gameplay mechanic is left over from back when the timer was a real-world timer that was running in the background of everything. And I believe that's hard-baked into how the game is coded, which is why the timer doesn't advance when we sleep. It just simply makes it daytime. Now, you might want to get the wood pile and the stone pile. These are a really great way of storing resources early on and allow you to store them outside without having to worry about them disappearing. If you just drop an item on the ground, it does eventually decay and disappear. And if you're not wanting to spend money on chests, or I say money, if you're not wanting to spend resources on chests in the early game because you're not 100% sure where your base is going to be finalized, and you don't want to just throw down a shack and fill it full of boxes, making a stone pile and a wood pile is a really great way to deal with a lot of resources, at least early on. And even in the late game, when I drop into a mission, I still find myself making stone piles and wood piles before I'm 100% sure on where my base is going to end up. The oxidizer is going to be your best friend, and although it will require you to craft one of these pretty early on in the tutorial in the first couple of missions, you are going to get to a point pretty quickly, especially if you end up investing in the oxygen bottle that you bring in from the workshop. You are going to get to a point where you're just going to bypass this altogether and go for the next level up in the oxygen generation, but you are going to need this pretty early, so if you've got the points and the ability to unlock it, you might as well grab it ASAP. Now, wooden chests, regardless of whether it's the medium wooden chest or the next one up from this, can be stacked on top of one another, so do be aware of that, but any chests beyond that cannot be stacked. What do you want from the medical section early on? Well, you're going to want a basic bandage, you're going to want a suture, and you're going to want a splint. If you've got the points to go ahead and get the healing salve or the healing concoction, go ahead and do so, but these three are going to be your best friend. So sutures are really great for deep wounds. Larger animals are going to be making deep wounds almost every time they hit you, and these are the only way of curing that until you get much better medicine down the line. And even in the late game, I still find myself crafting some of these when I'm out in the field. Splints heal broken bones, and it's really easy to get those in this game, especially at low levels. Falling from heights is pretty detrimental, irregardless of the height. You can get sprains and breaks and all kinds of stuff quite easily. Your basic bandage is how you're going to get rid of generic wounds. Getting attacked by a wolf, per se, could leave you with a wound. Now, any kind of wound, whether it's a normal wound or a deep wound, can turn into a festering wound or a hemorrhage, or it can even turn into a infection, or you can get parasites. And all of these have different debuffs that can dramatically affect your stamina, your health total, the way that you take damage, the way that you heal. The maximum amount of damage, or the maximum amount of your health, can be reduced temporarily depending upon how bad the wound is. And some of these durations can be in the 30 minutes to an hour long. So you could be dealing with this for quite a while if you don't take care of these right away before they develop into a much worse problem. Now, when I was recording this through the first time, I forgot to mention something that you really want to grab early on is a water purifier. Now, whether that's collecting from rainwater or collecting from a river or a pond, you're definitely going to need that, because if you drink directly from a water source that is unclean, you can get sick. And the debuffs that apply from you getting wounds, there's similar debuffs when you drink unsafe water, and that can leave your character feeling sick, can leave you with parasites, it can leave you with all kinds of nasty stuff that can last a really long time and really dramatically affect the way that your character acts while they're in the world. Now let's take a second to talk about weapons. Up to this point, you've either been using a bone knife or a wooden knife, but you're going to come across bows pretty early on. Now, I'm not the best shot with a bow, but you'll see soon here when I go back over the talent tree, you're going to see that the bows have a talent in them that basically turns arrows into heat-seeking missiles. And although that sounds super overpowered, and it can be absolutely overpowered, I personally prefer the gunplay in this game over a bow. You'll see that I still have the basic wooden bow unlocked. That's because when I first drop into a world, that's going to be my best bet for defending myself. Because a knife is really great for close quarters when it comes to things like a wolf, but if you can handle that wolf from range before he ever even gets to you, then you don't even have to worry about whether or not you've got bandages on you yet. That also said, though, there are much larger creatures in this game, like bears and even alien creatures, that can really mess you up. And for some reason, the horses are hostile on this planet, and they can hit pretty hard too. So might as well deal with those from range. And yes, you do get rewarded for headshots. Moving along, we can see all of the pastes I was talking about earlier. This is how you're going to deal with some of the more advanced injuries. That's why you got your antibiotics, your antiparasites, your blood thinners, your poison paste. This is the stuff that's going to evolve into the higher end medicine that you can see in my character's inventory. Now, I do recommend that if you're going to go ahead and grab the torch, if you've got the points, you want to immediately go ahead and get the wood torch. Yes, it requires sulfur, which is another ingredient in making the torch, but it burns for significantly longer. And if you get annoyed with your torch going out in the rain, you can get the floor torch and just stick it down in a cave. Eventually, you do learn how to make a torch that can survive underwater, but honestly, that's a waste of your talent tree because eventually you're going to get things like basically a butane torch that runs on biofuel, and you can see my character is using an electric lantern. These things can work underwater and are a really great way of lighting up lakes and rivers and things when you're exploring, either whether you're looking for fish or sponges or whatever you might need that's in the water. If you're going for the stealth approach, cloth armor is the way to go, but if you think you're going to be doing a lot of aggro, go ahead and skip straight to bone. In the case of this character, I have bone, but on Taylor, my other character, I have cloth. I don't particularly like picking fights with Taylor. She's kind of a glass cannon character, whereas this character was really meant to get in there and aggro. I fight alongside the tames, which are like our wolves and the horses and the other things you see walking around in the world with me. And those guys really help to whittle down anything I'm fighting, where I can then pick them off with a shotgun, which is what I have my character spec'd into. Once you've made it to the end of Tier 1, you're going to be presented with a lot of these building materials. Now, although I have Thatch, I had to get it in order to unlock an achievement for having all of the talents in Tier 1 from the base game. Now, I just wanted that achievement, but honestly, you can skip Thatch altogether. Wood is significantly more strong and is going to survive significantly more storms than whatever Thatch is going to. Thatch is very weak, it burns very quick, it burns easily, and fire does spread in this game. If you put a campfire down in a bush and then light that campfire, that bush is going to light on fire, and then the grass is going to light on fire, and then the trees are going to light on fire, and then your house is going to burn down. Or, if you put a torch on a wall in your house and your house is made of thatch, your house is going to go up in flames probably within the next 30 seconds. Fire spreads in this game, it is very detrimental, and although a fire thwacker goes a long way, it cannot save a thatch house. It will burn down probably faster than you can put the fire out. And with wood, it's going to give you a lot higher burn time, meaning you're going to have a better chance of putting out the fire, but also a much higher durability, which means that if it accidentally gets struck by lightning, you have a pretty good chance that you're going to survive it. Dirt foundations aren't needed right away, but they are definitely very helpful in the early game before you have concrete and things like stone. So if you've got the points and you think you're going to be in the world for a while, go ahead and grab a dirt foundation. But honestly, when you're building with the wood set, you can go ahead and mostly you can use the wooden beams and the wooden floors, both as a ceiling and as a floor. The wooden beams do a great job at reinforcing everything, and as long as you run the wooden beams all the way down into the ground, they give the building more structural stability, because that is a thing in this game. You can't just build an infinite bridge out into the middle of an open void. You can only go as far as those materials allow you, and things like concrete do let you build farther than things like wood, but if you're going to build like a 5x5 grid house, you're going to want to run some wooden beams down into the ground to act as supports, especially if all of the wooden floorboards are not connected to the ground in any way, shape, or form. But if you've got those dirt foundations, that's going to mitigate all that, and you can just build on top of the foundations. At the end of the day, play the game the way that you want to play, but this is how I spec'd my character, and it's worked really great for me. Tier 2 at this point should be pretty self-explanatory. A lot of this stuff is things that you're going to need. The entire bottom row is things like weapons and tools and other utilities, and you're pretty much almost going to entirely fill out the bottom row in almost every single tier from this point forward. There may be a handful of things that you decide to skip. In my case, there's some things I'm skipping because they're attached to DLC, or they have ores that are required that are just not in the area where I'm at, so there's no point in me having those techs. The entire upper end of the tech tree is all of your homestead stuff. This is the things that you're going to be using for crafting, whether that be food or your survival gear. You are going to see there, right in the middle of the screen, we have the contact device and the orbital exchange. Now this is how, in the open world, this is how you're going to get things in and out of the map. Also, in missions, if you find exotics and you want to get them out early and you don't want to hold on to them until the end of the game to extract with them, the orbital exchange is how you're going to get that out of the map. Simply interact with that, request a drop, it'll bring in a drop pod, put the exotics in the drop pod, send it back up. It gives you credit immediately. Now, I'm not going to go any farther into the tech tree than what I've done already, because that's a bit spoiler territory, and that's a bit more than what I want this video to be. So take a look for yourselves, figure out what you want, try to set that as a goal to get there, and then come back in and fill in those blanks as you need them, as you level up and get more tech points. Now, I don't recommend personally starting with an open world. I think you should start with a handful of missions, because that's basically the tutorial. Start with the first 3 or 4 missions, get those under your belt, and then at the end of that session, whether it be by yourself or with your friends, decide if you guys want to jump into an open world. Open worlds are a great place to get exotics. You saw how many I have. That's just from a couple of days of playing this save, and it got us a lot of exotics. They're kind of everywhere when you first drop in, and their respawn rate is fairly high. Just be aware that when the host leaves an open world, it will just kill the save. It will be gone. So anybody who is going to leave needs to leave before the host does. And you want to do the same thing in missions. The host should always be the last person out. That way nobody gets left behind and nobody loses their stuff. Now, talents might feel really overwhelming, and basically this is going to boil out to, what do you want this character's job to be in your world? In this case, I'm doing a lot of resource gathering, but when it comes to the combat tree, I'm doing a lot of firearms. And although I'm at the point where I'm no longer gathering talents, I do have a handful of things that really help out. For example, in this tree here under tools, I'm getting a lot cheaper tools, more durable tools, and tools that do more for me. Whereas in the survival section, well, although I didn't go that far down the hunting tree, I can see animals' health bars. Now, this isn't just great for deciding whether or not you should continue to fight that animal or not, or knowing if you're doing enough damage to survive the fight. This is a really great way of knowing if a fight's even around the corner. You know you're in bear territory. You might want to stay away from health bars, especially if you're low on health or low level. This is a really great way to know when danger's right around the corner. I have an upgrade on one of my pieces of armor that allows me to see bosses on the map. So I didn't even need that tech upgrade. But also, there's a thing that you can get from the workshop that allows you to see animal health bars. So if for some reason you've already been playing and you've decided that you just don't even want anything on the hunting tree, and you're worried that you're not going to be able to get this health bar upgrade, you can literally unlock the health bar upgrade by buying the item in the workshop and just bringing it in as part of your loadout. So there's a lot of things that are really nice to have that you can kind of work around depending upon the tech that you unlock in the workshop. This is why I keep saying just try to read things and keep in mind the job that you want to do and what's available to you, because there are ways around it. You aren't forced down a tech tree that you don't want to go down just to get one unlock, because you could actually get the technology through the workshop and get some kind of suit upgrade that's going to bypass all that anyway. Now, that said though, there is a lot of stuff in the resources section you're going to want to get. Things that reduce the carry weight of ores, things that allow you to carry more things in general, things that allow you that when you're chopping down a tree, it puts all the wood directly into your inventory. If you've dropped into a map at all, you'll know that cutting down trees kind of sucks in the early game, because it just splits it up into individual pieces of wood that you then have to pick up. You can eventually get a tech down the resource tree that just puts all that wood directly into your pocket. And you can even get talent points that you can sink into on this node under the resources that is going to allow you to break ore nodes or mine entire trees or chop down entire trees in a single go. Now, it's not going to trigger every single time, but it is very satisfying when it does it. Honestly though, guys, before you get too far down the tech tree, you really need to sit down and read some of the late game stuff in the combat section. I really like firearms, and firearms is a little bit lacking, similar to spears. However, blades and bows have a lot of really cool stuff in them, and depending upon your playstyle, you may want to go all the way down those tech trees. Like I said, I just like how guns handle in this game, which is the reason why I've gone down the gun tech tree. But, like I said, you can also basically end up with a heat-seeking bow if you go all the way down the bow tech tree. So, just keep in mind, look at the things that are available to you, find out what your playstyle is going to be. You don't have to have points in these tech trees in order to use those weapons anyway. So if you go down the bow tree and then your friend makes you a rifle, it's not going to be a detriment to you to use the rifle your friend made for you. But anyway, I've jabbered on long enough. This has probably been a lot of information for you guys to take in. I've tried to strip it down as best as I can without being too overwhelming. But just know that when you drop into your first game, go ahead and pick up Oxite. It's going to be the way that you keep yourself alive, keep yourself breathing. And then the more things you mine in the early game, the faster you're going to level up. Resource gathering is a really great way of leveling up. And if you cut down a dozen or so trees and you mine up a dozen or so rocks, regardless of whether it's stone or an ore, you're really going to boost yourself a handful of levels right out of the gate, right on your first drop. In any case, hopefully I've gotten you guys pointed in the right direction. And if you think there's anything I missed that I should have included, feel free to put it down in the comment section so that other people can help learn as well. Like I said at the start of this video, I don't see myself as an authority, but I do hope that I can get you guys pushed in the right direction. This is what works for me, and take what I say with a grain of salt. In any case, I'll talk to you guys in the next video.